and welcome to this time's Patron exclusive episode. I got a little backdrop to try to make it seem a little less weird that I'm recording in my closet. You know the drill, I'm not dirty, my hair is wet, and before anybody can point it out, I'm a gap-tooth hillbilly. So I'm going to be like that until probably after March, well, probably into April or May, so get used to seeing that. All of this took way more time than I wanted to admit. I have a little mouse down here, not to ruin the magic, but you won't see my hands this time. So 2019 is just, or 2020 is just a year of, like, getting my shit together. And here we are. So, this, ironically, was not the original planned, post for today. I was actually going to do this for the 15th, but I was just so excited I wanted to do it sooner rather than later. So I have this for you today. And if you do recall, there was a trivia question, or there's going to be a trivia question, I don't remember if it's been posted yet or not, about this guy. And in the little bit of research I did for that, he was so fascinating that I wanted to do a full episode on it, and I wanted it to be special, and so it's going to be a Patron episode. So, thank you for being here. I'm also here, and let's just dive right into it. So, this one is unsolved, and I think that's maybe why it's so fascinating to me, but there are some weird little, like, intricacies that I thought were fascinating. So, from February 22nd, 1968 until Halloween of 1969, 3 women were murdered in Glasgow, Scotland. Glasgow? I think that's right. Glasgow is the most populous city in Scotland and the 3rd most populated city in the UK. So it's... Sorry. I didn't realize my makeup looked like shit. Whatever. 3rd most populated city in the UK. So on February 23rd, 1968, the nude body of 25-year-old Patricia Docker, who was a married woman with a 4-year-old son, was found by a man on his way to work in South Glasgow. Glasgow? Yes. He was taking a shortcut through an alleyway and assumed she was a drunk who had passed out, but when he nudged her with his foot, she was unresponsive. So her body was found only yards away from her parents' home. She had been staying with her parents at the time because she and her husband had split. They were doing like a small separation. I don't think they were in the process of getting a divorce, but he was in the Royal Air Force and he was away at the time, and so she was staying with her parents with her son. Her body had evidence of blunt force trauma, mostly to the face and head. She had been strangled with most likely a belt, but later on, I think people assume it was a stocking, but at this time they believed it was a belt. Her purse, watch, and clothing were not anywhere near the crime scene. She was wearing a single shoe. Her clothes were never found, but her purse was found in River Cart, which is a river that goes through Scotland and Glasgow specifically, so it seemed like it was just dumped in a nearby body of water, or maybe driven somewhere and just thrown into the river. But it was found about 9 miles away from the center of Glasgow. She had been beaten and strangled, but there was no clear evidence of sexual assault. A sweep of the residents nearby proved fruitless. No one recalled the woman or her struggle besides someone vaguely remembering a woman screaming, "Leave me alone," the night before. Because of the beating Patricia took, her face was almost unrecognizable. 2 of Patricia's co-workers, so she was an infirmary nurse at the local Victoria Infirmary, people had thought maybe it was a patient that had gotten, lost or confused or attacked. So nurses from that hospital went to see if it was one of their patients, but they didn't recognize her. So they tried to identify the body, but they didn't have any luck, and it wasn't until an ambulance driver saw the corpse and recognized her as a nurse that worked at the hospital. So it took an ambulance driver to recognize that it was Patricia. Patricia's parents were aware of the body, but they didn't think it was their daughter. However, they were worried enough that she hadn't returned home yet, so Patricia's father went to the police station and made an identification. Heartbreaking to not even think it was going to be your daughter, but to have that, they must have had like that gut feeling, I would presume, like just that feeling in your chest where they're like, uh-oh. And so they went and yeah, it was their daughter. Something that adds complexity to this case was that Patricia had not been completely truthful about where she had gone that evening, or something along the way had gotten messed up about that evening. She had told her parents that she was going to the Majestic, which was a nightclub. Police looked into that lead, but 3 days later, after the investigation had already been gone on, they found out that she had actually gone to the Barrel Ballroom instead, or afterwards. So by the time they made it to the Barrel End to see any leads, they were already cold. This is why you don't lie to your parents, but at the same time, it is unknown if she willingly lied to her parents, or if, she had actually gone to the Majestic and then ended up at the Barrel End. We don't know her whereabouts or her movements that evening. But it is known that Thursday nights and Saturday nights were over 25s nights at the Barrel Ballroom, which were apparently a highly attended event. It was known for being ruckus, but it was 1968, so things were raucous at the time. Autopsy results suggested that she had been killed shortly after leaving the Barrel End that evening, implying she met her killer while there. Because there was no solid evidence or leads, the case died pretty quickly. Police chalked it up to being at the wrong place at the wrong time. So a little bit of information about the Barrel Ballroom, because it's going to be a predominant part of our story. It was built in 1934 and then rebuilt in 1960. It's still standing. It's still open for business. It's known for hosting big bands like Oasis, U2, The Clash, The Smiths, Muse, and Foo Fighter. So it's a pretty big place for hosting, like, reputable bands like that. In 1968, at the time, though, it was predominantly known as a dance club used for Wild Thursday and Saturday nights. They're over 25 nights. So, over a year goes by before we have another incident. About, I think, 18 months, if I remember correctly. I'm not going to try to do the math because I'm not going to do it right. Sorry. Saturday, August 16th, 1969, 32-year-old Jemima McDonald decides to go to the Barrel End. She was a regular patron there. She went there all the time. She got her sister Margaret to watch her 3 children as she went out, which I think was also a regular occurrence. It happened all the time, so Margaret was often willing to babysit Jemima's kids. Jemima was seen by several people in the company of a well-dressed man between the ages of 25 and 35 years old. He was slim and relatively tall. He was about 6'2". He had short, dark brown hair and spoke with a distinct Glaswegian, Glasgow patter accent, which I'm assuming means he talked like he was from Glasgow. He also inserted biblical references into his conversation, which I wrote I'm sure would be memorable, because if you're like at the club trying to have this good time and this guy's just like going off about Bible verses, I could understand how he'd be like, that guy, I remember him. You'd remember that guy. This super tall guy rattling off Bible quotes. Probably memorable. Jemima left the Barrel End just after midnight on Sunday, August 17th, leaving with the Bible guy. She was seen walking toward her home, but she never got there. The next day, Margaret was concerned and had heard rumors about young children finding a body in an abandoned building. By Monday, Margaret herself walked into the building where she found Jemima lying face down, beaten to death. Which, the weird thing here for me personally is that, so the rumors had spread enough that Margaret had heard about a dead body in a building, and police didn't check that out. Be like, oh, we've heard all these rumors about this dead body, let's go find it. So no, Margaret had to go find her own sister. She had found Jemima lying face down, beaten to death. I don't understand why nobody else was there to find the body. I don't know why she didn't call the police if she was concerned it was her sister. I don't understand a whole lot of that, but it is what it is. Margaret found her sister. Jemima's clothes and stockings were with her body. Autopsy revealed that she'd been raped and beaten and subsequently strangled with one of her stockings. Her body was fully clothed. And weirdly enough, which while I started researching this, I didn't find it very important, but as I got along, I did realize it is important to note that Jemima and Patricia were both menstruating at the times of their death. That's going to be a thing. Although there had been a ton of similarities about their deaths, Glasgow police didn't think the crimes were related originally. They didn't completely rule it out either, though, but they're like, it's probably, because they were over a year and a half apart. yeah, they were similar, but they weren't like identical, and I don't know much about the victim profile, like as in race or well, I know their age, but I don't know their race or where they lived, or I just know that they were women who had kids who had went to the Barrel Ballroom. So I mean, maybe it seemed different at the time. I have no idea. Maybe they were completely different builds, different body types, different heights. I didn't see any pictures of the victims. They weren't anywhere when I was researching this. Sometimes they don't do that though. If you're like looking up cases, sometimes they don't ever even show you a picture of the victim, and it's really difficult to try and find that. I guess I'm just now realizing that it's weird that I never saw any pictures of the victims. So my apologies on that. If I find them, I'll edit them into this video, because that's weird. The composite drawing of the man that Jemima had been seen with was distributed in newspapers and Scottish TV. It was the first time it had ever been done before in a Scottish murder investigation. Nobody had ever released composite sketches before like that. Male and female police officers went undercover at the Barrel Ballroom in an attempt to ID the suspect by October 1969. The investigation petered out due to the lack of the suspect appearing, and complaints by Barrel's owners that their presence was reducing clients. Which, I understand a business, especially like a club like that, being like, hey, you're really cramping our style, you're really hurting our business. But at the same time, people are dying. People are going to your club and then getting murdered. Just the devil's advocate. I understand you're trying to make some money, but people are also dying when they come to your club, so I think you should just kind of take the business hit for a little while until this guy gets captured, right? Because, leads me to my point, that on Halloween 1969, a man walking his dog found 29-year-old Helen Puttock behind an apartment building. Her body was found beside a drain pipe. She was partially naked and had been beaten, then raped, then strangled with one of her own stockings. Her handbag was missing from the scene, just like in the case of Patricia and Jemima. From the crime scene, it looked like she put up a massive struggle with her attacker. She had a deep bite mark on her upper thigh, and she had also been menstruating at the time of her death. Weirdly enough, and also connecting her further to the spree of killings, police found out that Helen and her sister Jean had gone to the Barrel Ballroom. They met two men, both named John. One was well-spoken and the other one worked the one was well-spoken and the other worked in a building industry. The other John, the well-spoken one, did not talk about his career or where he lived. Jean, Helen's sister, had danced with the normal builder John, and Helen had danced with the weird, well-spoken John. The quartet left the Barrel at the same time. Builder John walked alone to the bus stop, and Helen, Jean, and Weird John hailed a taxi together. During their time together, Jean learned a lot about this man. He was brought up Christian and understood, Jean was brought up Christian and understood a lot of Weird John's lifestyle. She found out he was a teetotaler, which means a complete absence of alcoholic beverages. He repeatedly quoted the Old Testament, and he had referred to the Barrel as an adulterous den of iniquity, which in layman's terms means the den of evil. He strongly disapproved of married men visiting the Barrel, and after arriving to a central location, the gang split up. Which I'm assuming Jean went her own way, and Weird John and Helen went their own way too. Jean described Weird John as tall, slim, well-dressed man between the ages of 25 and 30. He had reddish fair hair. He said his name was something along the lines of John Templeton, John Simpleson, or John Emerson, but I'm assuming because the music was so loud in the club that she couldn't hear what he was trying to say. Jean also said that while in the cab with her sister and this John, that John had seen her presence as like being really annoying. Like she could tell he was pissed that she was there. The driver on a night bus had noticed a man meeting Jean's description, boarding a bus around 2 a.m. on Halloween. He had mud stains on his jacket, a red mark beneath his eye, and he was apparently having issues with his sleeve, and a cufflink had been found near Helen's body. Similarities begin to build. So they're Glasgow police are kind of they're catching on to like the situation here. All three victims had been mothers. All of them had met their killer at the Barrel. All of them had been on their period. All of their purses were missing. All of them had been strangled. All women had been escorted almost completely to where they lived and murdered within yards of their home. All of them had their pad or tampon placed on or near their body, which led some people to believe that their murderer made sexual advances but was denied because of menstruation, which caused the killer to kill them. Which I could see to some extent. Like, there were, you know, he meets this girl at the Barrowland and they're gonna have a nice time, and then they almost get home and he's like, oh, can I come over? And she's like, no, sorry, I'm on my period, and then he kills them. Which it's a little extreme. I mean, geez, it's only a week. Like, you could just wait if you really like a girl that much, but that's besides the point. I don't know if that's why he did it, but that's a theory. Police made another composite with Jean's description and attempted to use the bite marks and his distinctive haircut to get any leads from dentists or barbers in Glasgow. The case garnered 100 detectives working full-time and 50,000 witness statements. 5,000 potential suspects were found, and poor Jean had to attend over 300 witness lineups. None of them were the man that she had seen with her sister. All of them were sent home. 16 detectives were sent to dance and hold station at the dance halls in Glasgow, mostly over the 25 nights on Thursday and Saturday at the Barrowland. However, the suspect disappeared, no more murders occurred, and the cases went cold. Some suspected that he was in the British Army or Navy and only killed while he was in the area, or he had been arrested on another charge and locked up, or he was put into an insane asylum, or he was dead. Kind of like their reasons. There were some good potential suspects, but none of them ever came to fruition. There was a man named John White. He was arrested while arguing with a woman in the Barrowland ballroom. The same man had been arrested outside the Barrowland during the times of these murders. He had needed several stitches after an altercation. He was taken to the hospital by police, but as soon as they took his handcuffs off, he fled. He had lied, saying his name was John White. No one knows his real name, but he was dismissed, possibly incorrectly because his teeth didn't fit the description. They said he had like a overlap and he was missing a top tooth. Hey, like me. My Bible Jana? No, I'm not that old. I also don't murder people. But so the rest of him fit the description, but his teeth didn't. They were like, it's not him, but it could have been him. Several people believe that John White may have been Bible John. John McInnes, in 1996, a body was exhumed. He had committed suicide at 41 in 1980. He was the cousin of one of the original suspects. DNA samples were taken from his body and compared them to semen samples discovered at Helen Puddock's crime scene. There was no conclusive evidence, and he was ultimately cleared for being a suspect. Peter Tobin, a convicted Scottish serial killer, has several coincidences with Bible John. He looked similar at the time of the Barrowland murders, and he had also moved away from Glasgow in 1969, the same year that the murders stopped. His dental records, specifically the one where people said that Bible John had an upper missing tooth, also coincided with Peter Tobin because he had a tooth taken out in 1960. Apparently, it was a rumor that Tobin had reacted violently to his victim's menstrual cycle, which would fit the bill for our Bible John guy. Police officially haven't commented on any connection. Due to the DNA deterioration, police believe it would be fruitless to try to compare their DNA. Also, Jean Langford, Helen Puddock's sister, is adamant that Peter Tobin is not the man that she and her sister spent time with at the Barrowland Ballroom. The investigation is still ongoing, and in 2004, police continued genetically testing a number of men in an attempt to find the killer. No more information has come to light on this case. Jean Langford, Helen Puddock's sister, died in September of 2010 at the age of 74, and that is Bible John. Very interesting story of an unsolved murder, which I had never heard of him before. I love doing these ones that I don't know anything about. They're fascinating to me. This was fascinating to me. I had a lot of no, there's only so many rabbit holes, but it is interesting to speculate who could have done this, because there's no end to the story. It's still open. Nobody knows who did it. People have their ideas. I think that's unsolved cases, as frustrating as they are. It's interesting to speculate who it could be. And one day, you know, with genetic testing becoming as advanced as it is, maybe we'll know, but maybe we won't. So, that is the serial killer Bible John. And this was your Patron exclusive episode. Sorry it's late. I tried to make it nice for you guys. And hopefully it'll be edited. I guess we'll find out when you watch this if it's edited or not. I'm going to try my best to learn how to do that today. So, thanks for watching.